Lately, I've been having trouble keeping a consistent sleep schedule. I'm sure plenty of other 20-somethings can relate. Every time I manage to fall asleep at a good time, I'll stay up a little bit later the next night, and so on and so forth until once again I'm waking up at 5 p.m. and going down at 7 a.m. As I have no girlfriend or job or goals in life, it really hasn't been a problem I've been keen on fixing. Anyway, got to another sleepless night, and I realize I have literally no clean clothes. I live in the middle of hot Arizona, so even someone who doesn't go outside often ends up with pit stains in his shirts. Plus the grease from wiping my meals on my jeans was getting a bit thick too. So, genius that I am, I decide to go a laundry run. My apartment complex has a laundry room a short walk away from my building. So washing my clothes at the dead of night isn't the most insane idea, but of course that doesn't keep me from feeling creeped out on the walk there. You know that feeling, being in the middle of the city, way past a reasonable person's curfew, when it's dark and quiet, and you feel like you're the only person there. You know you aren't, though. The city has a population of several million, and you're in the middle of an apartment complex of over 50 units. That sense of quiet feels fake, that loneliness misleading. It sort of feels like you're doing something wrong, or you're somewhere you aren't supposed to be, but you can't logically put a feeling on why. Anyway, that's how I felt as I took the short walk to the laundry room. The laundry facility itself is actually outside of the gated community for some reason, so I had to go through said gate to get there. When you're doing this after midnight, you feel like a complete asshole, or at least I did. It's one of those cheap metal gates with this new lock that opens with an app on your phone. So, in addition to the loud, rusty sounding creak of the gate opening and the echoing slam of it shutting, there's also an obnoxious when it unlocks. Compared to the eerie silence of the sleeping city, it seems like the loudest noise that could be. It feels like you might wake your neighbors or alert something else in the quiet dark to your location. It's the city, so of course it wasn't that dark, with streetlights everywhere to try and create some semblance of safety. Even so, the fluorescent white lights of the laundry room felt like a relief when I stepped in from the dark, quiet, hot night air. Turning the washing machine and hearing those thumps and electric hums felt even better. I felt a weird comfort in there, like I was in a confined, safe space that was shut off from some great trouble on the other side of the door. It reminded me of when I was a kid and I would sit in the bathroom letting the shower run, knowing my parents fighting in the other room wouldn't bother me in there. If that seems like too much information, it's because it's such a specific kind of feeling. And if you can relate, you might understand how weird it was to suddenly be feeling it here. The point was, I sat down on one of those little benches facing the wall of dryers. I sat down, looked at my phone for a minute, then I leaned my head back and shut my eyes. The next thing I remember was the sound of someone trying to turn the locked doorknob to the laundry room. The room has sort of an L shape, and my back was to a wall that blocked my view of the door, so I couldn't see who it was. I could tell, however, that they were really trying to get in, shaking the knob violently, as if the electronic lock would give out with enough pressure. I thought about letting them in, but then I heard them. "Hello?" A man's voice said, "Are you in there? Can you open the door? Open the door, please." Maybe I'm just a bad person, but as soon as I heard him speak, I froze. I decided in that moment not to be a good Samaritan and instead sat there, where I knew he couldn't see me. I remember thinking to myself, if he was supposed to be in here, he'd have the app on his phone too. If he was allowed in here, he could unlock the door. The idea of a stranger trying to get into the laundry room with me this late at night, a stranger who didn't even live here, was enough to keep me away from that door. I was stuck there now, and so I leaned my head back against the wall and shut my eyes again. Hey. I snapped back awake at the sound of another person. There was a guy peeking over from the bend of the corner, as if he wasn't sure if he was supposed to see me there or not. He was dressed in a black sweatshirt and skinny jeans, bald, with the greenest eyes I think I've ever seen. He was pale and gaunt, and had a look that made me think tweaker against my better judgment. I made small talk with him, trying to act like I wasn't just asleep.
We talked about how hot it was out there. He asked which machines were empty, and I said all of them, more or less. It was an awkward, quick little exchange until he said, "Did you hear me at the door?" I felt icicles on the back of my neck. It was only now that I recognized the guy's voice as the same from before. I felt guilty, and more than that, afraid of what he might do if I said yes. I immediately felt all the more uncomfortable being alone here with this guy. No, I lied. I was asleep, sorry. Are you lying to me? He said with a weird sternness in his voice. It was like a parent talking to a child. No, I responded. No, I really was just asleep. I couldn't hear you, sorry. Huh, he responded. He started at me for a moment, his mouth hanging slightly open. It felt like the longest couple of seconds of my life until he walked away to tend to his wash cycle. I stared at my phone until he left, dreading every single moment, as I attentively listened to the sounds of his footsteps until I heard the door shut again. When I was certain he was gone, I knew it was time to get back home. But then, I froze again. If I was uncomfortable being alone in here with him, I thought, it would be so much worse being alone out there, in the dark, with him. What if he followed me home? The thought kept me on that bench until I felt my eyes closing again. When they opened again, that dude was back in front of me, leaning down, staring right into my face. I jumped, to say the least, but didn't have the courage to shout at him or do anything but whisper, "What the fuck?" in a panic. "You fell asleep," he said like some kind of detective. His inflection was so strange, it was like he was asking me a question and making a statement at the same time. I didn't know which it was, so I responded, yeah. I was as far back against the wall as I could be at this point, clearly trying to get away from the man standing between me and my escape. Instead of seeing how uncomfortable I was, though, he chose to sit right down next to me. I felt like I might just break into tears at that moment. "Are you here all alone?" That question was maybe the worst thing I could have heard at the moment. "No," I lied. "I'm waiting on my brother." I don't have a brother, much less one I was waiting on, but I wanted to put the image in the guy's head that there was another man coming here soon. I felt like it might keep me safer. "Uh-huh," he said in response. His voice was raspy, and the weird way of pronouncing what I imagine was meant to be, "uh-huh," felt like something trying to remember how to sound human. It's then that he put his hand on my thigh. "You're a sweet thing," he said, and I felt my lower lip tremble. Sweet, tender. I'm a man, and I'm not in the best shape, so I am in no way used to getting hit on, certainly not by crackhead dudes with no sense of personal space. It was possible, I assumed, but something about the way he was looking at me made it feel wrong. I struggled to describe it, even in my own head. He wasn't looking at me in a way that felt lecherous. In fact, it didn't look like he had any kind of desire within him at all. Instead, it felt like there was some kind of inexplainable hunger behind those eyes. Whatever the case, I never want to know what he was thinking in that moment. I heard the door open again, and the sound was startling enough to break me out of my fear trance and make me stand up. Another man came in, this guy much heavier than both of us, and hairy too. with hair longer than most women I've met and a big beard on his face. It must have given some credence to my lie from before, because the tweaker guy stood up when he saw him. He shot me one more of those inexplainable glances before heading out the door. If I wasn't going to walk out that door before, I sure as shit wasn't going to do it now. I felt way more comfortable with this new guy here anyway, especially since he seemed to mind his own business. Before I knew what I was doing, I found myself shutting my eyes again. Don't go with him. I woke up again to the sound of a new voice, and given what happened last time, I was in a panic. This time, however, it was just the heavier guy in the room with me, tending to his dryer. I must have slept through his entire wash cycle, and I was immediately surprised and worried that I wasn't woken up by the tweaker in all that time. You shouldn't go with him, the guy said again, his back facing me. I shouldn't go with who? I asked, confused, but somehow feeling like I knew just who he was talking about. Don't go with that guy, he said again, a bit of a hum in his voice as he started the dry cycle. You won't like him. He isn't good for you. Okay, thanks, I said, not sure what else there was to say. He simply nodded and walked back out into the night. I realized quickly that this was probably my best chance to get home. I all but ran my way out, not caring about my laundry, which was still sitting wet in the washing machine. As soon as I cleared the threshold of the door, the dude was gone, nowhere to be seen, and I was immediately in some kind of panic. I started power walking towards my apartment when I heard a familiar voice, and my heart all but stopped. Hey there, he rasped, sweet and tender. I broke into a run towards the gate and without thinking tried the handle. It was locked, of course, and as I reached for my phone, I could hear the sounds of rushed footsteps against the pavement behind me. My hands were shaking as I tried to unlock my phone, get to the app, and hold it to the gate's Bluetooth sensor. Oh my God, the loading bar. It felt intentionally designed to break my heart, moving up to 60% and then stopping for a few seconds. A second that felt like it would be my last. I cursed at my phone, my voice cracking, pleading to just work, until I finally heard that obnoxious beep, which at that moment was the greatest sound I had ever heard in my life. I reached for the gate and pulled it open. It got maybe 2 inches open when I felt firm hands grab my shoulders, pulling me back. I watched my grip slip off of the gate handle and saw it slam shut, locking in place. My eyes flew open, and I was back at the laundry room. I broke into a weak laugh and even started crying a little bit. The laundry cycle was still going, and according to the timer on the machine, I couldn't have been asleep longer than 10 minutes. That was an hour ago. I'm sitting here, still in the laundry room, typing all of this out because I don't know how else to keep myself awake. I called 911 immediately, but I'm still waiting for a patrol car or something to show up. I told them that I felt like my life was in danger, that someone was following me and was going to attack me if I left the laundry room. I really didn't know what else to tell them. I don't know what to think myself, really. All I know is that a few minutes after I woke up, I heard the door to the laundry room shaking, and a familiar man's voice asking, "Hello? Are you in there? Can you open the door? Open the door, please."